Divorce? My God. Homelessness? These weren't part of my plan. This is part of nobody's plan. I came to this conclusion. I did not want to shy away from it. I was tired of pretending I was fine when I wasn't. I stopped sugarcoating the situation and I stopped trying to wrap it up in a nice bow. Now, don't get me wrong, this wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't a straight line from, oh, I'm broken to I'm whole. It was more a winding road with many detours, plenty of tears and moments of doubt and hopelessness, moments of helplessness. Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Prominent Matters. I am Shyami, and today's episode is one that I hope will touch your heart and inspire you to embrace your true self, even in life's messiest seasons. I want to share a story, a deeply personal one, about authenticity, self-discovery, and the foundation that kept me standing while the storms of life were blowing so hard around and in my life. And these storms had the intent of bringing me down. But I want to share with you what kept me standing. Let me ask this question. Have you ever faced a moment where your life veered off so far from the plan that you had for yourself, it left you questioning everything? Not just questioning your circumstances, but also questioning yourself as a person, where you felt that everything that you could count on was just pulled right off of under your feet. And maybe you faced a moment where the plans that you had stipulated just disappeared into nothing, leaving you wondering if you had the strength to go on. And this is where I found myself a few years ago. This is exactly what happened to me. And I want to tell you today how I picked myself up and started all over again. See, for many years, I lived in a world where what I needed, basically, a roof over my head, clothes on my back, food on my table, these needs were met by others. So firstly, as a child, my father took care of me. And subsequently, as I grew older, I got married. Then my husband took care of my needs. And I want to let you know that I'm grateful for that care. But when my marriage ended and life left me destitute, homeless, I found myself standing at crossroads I never thought I'd face. See, it wasn't just about losing a home. It wasn't losing a relationship status. It was about losing the life that I thought, that I dreamt would be mine. Divorce? My God. Homelessness? These weren't part of my plan. This is part of nobody's plan, and certainly was not my plan. And let me tell you, just facing those words, owning that reality, to me, it felt like I was looking into an abyss. This wasn't the life that I had dreamt of. Like I said, divorce, homeless, these were words I never imagined would describe my reality. But as painful as it was, I made a decision to own my story. After quite a while, I came to this conclusion. I did not want to shy away from it. I was tired of pretending I was fine when I wasn't. And so I stopped sugarcoating the situation, and I stopped trying to wrap it up in a nice bow. Instead, I chose to own it. I said, this is my life right now. It's not where I want to be, but it's where I am. And you know something? When I stopped running from my reality, when I stood in the truth of where I was, when I looked at it in the face, it almost gave me permission to discover who I really was. Who am I? Not the roles that I've played, not the expectations of others, but me, just me without all of that. Who was or who is the woman that God created, the woman God created me to be? And you know what I realized? Who I was or who I am is enough. I know it's too simple, but it is a powerful revelation. It dawned on me that I measured my worth by what I could do for others, by the roles I fulfilled. A wife, a mother, a pastor, a friend. But standing in the rawness of my situation, I learned something really profound. And sometimes this is why I say we must thank God for the processes of life, because I probably may never have come to this realization if I had not gone through what I went through. I learned that my worth doesn't come from what I do. It comes from who I am. See, Jesus tells a story in the book of Matthew chapter 7, and he tells this story of two men who built their houses. And the story goes on that one built his house on the rock and the other built his house on the sand. And so they both built. That means there was something that they could look at and they could enjoy. Others would have seen it, passerbys would have seen it, admired it. Some may have wished, wow, I wish I had a house like that. And others would have looked upon it and clapped for those who built it because it seemed like something. But then Jesus says there came a day that the rains beat down and that the waters, the floods began to rise. And in that situation, in that circumstance, the house that was built on the sand came crumbling down, and the house that was built on the rock stood firm. Now, Jesus was actually talking not about physical houses, but about the lives that we build. And can I tell you that that story became so real to me in that season? Because the storm had come. The rains were beating down. The floods were rising. The storm had come and it felt relentless. But as I stood in the wreckage of what was, I discovered something amazing. And this discovery, this revelation, if you like, is something which I had not realized until the storm came. And that was that my life, my identity was built on the solid rock of Jesus Christ. And the thing is, God always knew that. And so that storm came not for God to discover something in my life, but so that God could let me see that my life and my identity, because my recovery was based on this revelation, my spring back was based on this revelation. My comeback was based on this revelation that no matter the wreckage in which I stood. My life, my identity was built on the solid rock of Jesus. And so the storm came, but because my foundation was secure, I was still standing. See, the storm comes to destroy. The storm comes to make you lose your mind. But I realized, as awful, as devastating, as painful as my circumstance was, I was standing. Now, don't get me wrong. This wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't a straight line from, oh, I'm broken to I'm whole. It was more a winding road with many detours, plenty of tears and moments of doubt and hopelessness, moments of helplessness. But along the way, I began to see the beauty in the process. And the questions I asked myself was, who am I without those functional titles? What do I believe about my own value? And so those questions led me again to this realization that who I was created to be is enough for whatever I need to do. Not perfect, not flawless, far from it, but enough. Standing in the rawness of my situation, I learned something profound. My worth doesn't come from what I do. It comes from who I am. Your worth doesn't come from what you do. It comes from who you are. And so when I stopped pretending that everything was okay and embraced the truth of where I was, I experienced a new kind of freedom. And that freedom was that I could be myself, that I could be honest with myself, authentic with myself, honest with myself and with God. And so being authentic, it allowed me to step into a deeper relationship with God. The psalmist says in the book of Psalms, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That verse became an anchor for me, because I discovered that I was not just surviving the storm, I was learning to thrive in the middle of it, because I knew that God was with me. And in that process, I discovered something incredible. Like I already said, who I am is enough. Not because I'm perfect, again, far from it, but because I am His. So, returning to the story of the two guys, the two builders, I came to see that my foundation, and again, this is not something that God didn't know about me. This is something that God wanted me to know about myself. I came to see that my foundation, the investments that I had made in my life, that my foundation wasn't built overnight. It was years of trusting God. It was years of building my life on God's word. It was years, season after season, committing my life to God. And that when the storm came, it didn't or it couldn't destroy me, because Jesus was my foundation. And again, the psalmist describes this beautifully. He says, truly, the Lord is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress and I will not be shaken. It felt like I was shaken like a reed in the wind, but I realized He is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress and I will not be shaken. Even though it felt like it, my reality was I will not be shaken. Yes, 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 the storm revealed the cracks in my plans, but it also revealed the unshakable strength of the rock beneath me. And so if you are listening right now and you're feeling lost, you're feeling confused, you're feeling devastated, you're feeling distraught, you are perplexed, you are in a place, in a season you never imagined you would end up in, let me remind you of this. You are not defined by your circumstances. You are not defined by your failures. You are not defined by your losses or the plans that didn't work out. Who you are at your core is already enough to become the person that you need to be to bounce back. Who you are at your core is already enough to become the person that's going to make a comeback after what has happened in your life. And it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge the pain. I lived my life for years as though someone to whom no bad thing ever happens. And thank God no major bad thing ever happened, but we live life. Life happens to all of us. And so it's okay to acknowledge the pain, to grieve the plans that did not work out. But don't let the pain blind you to the truth of your own strength. Don't let the pain blind you to the truth of your own worth. If you feel like the storm has swept away everything you thought you could rely on, because that's what it did to me, it just took away everything that I could lean on, rely on, trust in, depend on, and count on. If you feel like the storm has swept everything you thought you could rely on, let me encourage you. You are enough. And that's the truth that anchored me. I am enough, not because of what you achieved, but because of who God declares you to be. You don't have to wear a mask. And this is the pressure that life puts on us. We have to look all put together. We have to be the people that nothing wrong happens in our lives. We have to be the people who are the strongest. We have to be the people when other people look at us, our house looks magnificent, standing tall. But you don't have to wear a mask, and you don't certainly have to pretend to be someone that you are not. Your authenticity, and this is what I discovered, my authenticity, when aligned with God's truth, what God thinks about me, what God knows about me, what God has said about me, empowered by the Holy Spirit, that is more than enough to endure and rise above any storm. Can I say that again? That your authenticity, when aligned with God's truth concerning you, what God thinks and knows about you, is more than enough. Not just to be in a storm or go through a storm, but also to rise above. See, living authentically means showing up as yourself. And for me, for many years, I thought that I was not enough. That if I show up in my authentic self, I might not measure up to other people's expectations. But living authentically means showing up as yourself, even when it's messy. It means owning the story. I had to own my story, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. And finding the courage to keep moving forward, to not letting being exposed exposed, everything stripped off, and standing by the wayside and everybody passing you by and examining your life, it is finding the courage to keep moving forward in those seasons. And for me, that meant letting go of the idea that my life had to look a certain way for it to be meaningful. It meant embracing the truth that my journey, with all of its twists and turns, has purpose. And it means the same for you. Living authentically means embracing your story, every triumph, every scar, and believing that God is a master in weaving it into something beautiful for your good and for His glory. Because that is what the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 8. And verse 28, that we know that all things God works for the good of those who love Him. And so the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, God is a master of working it out for my good, for your good, because we love Him and we have been called according to His purpose. So today, I challenge you, own your reality. Be honest with yourself about where you are, but don't let it define where you are going. It's not the end of your story. When I went through my breakup, when I became homeless, when I became destitute, I refused with a lot of strength, with a lot of prayer, I refused to let it define where I was going. It seemed like my story had come to a screeching halt, but I challenged myself, and this is my challenge to you. Own your reality. Be honest with yourself about where you are, but don't let it define where you are going. Let your authenticity become the foundation for your growth. And I know it is uncomfortable because you have to do life in a way that you may have never done life before. But that process of discovery, that process of being creative, that process of knowing, hey, I have nothing to lose. Let your authenticity become the foundation for your growth. And remember this, who you are is enough to become who you're meant to be. Who you are is enough to become who you're meant to be. And my prayer is that you find the courage to be authentic, to stand firm in your faith, and to trust that God will reveal the strength of your foundation. And so today, I want to thank you for joining me on this deeply personal journey. And if today's episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear your story. Because you know what it does? It encourages someone else. I'm sure it will encourage me. And so let's continue to encourage each other. Put your comments in the comment section. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Let's continue to encourage each other to live authentically and to live boldly. Jesus being your solid rock. And so, until next time, stay true to yourself and remember that the rock beneath you is unshakable.